Have you ever seen a normally calm person completely lose it? What happened? I had a friend who was in his 60s, a functioning alcoholic, but he was the most calm and composed guy I've ever known. He never used to raise his voice or swear. Everything was done with meticulous precision. He once explained to me that if you use vulgar language and shout all the time, then you will have nowhere to go when you really do get angry. I'd worked with him for about 3 years and never heard him raise his voice or swear before. The week before, he had been shafted on his pay and the manager promised to get it sorted by Friday. Friday rolled around and it had not been sorted. So when my friend walked up to the manager in the open office and declared loudly, "Where the frick is my money? You promised this would be resolved." The whole office went silent and the look of dread on the manager's face was haunting. The money was in his account by the end of the day. That was him losing his crap. Story 2. One time in high school, a couple bullies were up on this other kid's face. Dude was just sitting there like Anton Chigurh or Private Pile. No expression and staring straight ahead, clearly not hearing a thing. One of the bullies inched closer and the kid decked him as hard as he could in the face. The bully was knocked to the floor, speechless, with his nose bleeding everywhere. The kid then calmly stood up, still with no emotion, calmly packed his things and made his own way to the principal's office as if nothing happened at all. It's still one of the most brutal things I've ever seen. It was like right out of a movie. Walking yourself to the principal's okay, this kid is sick as hell. Like, without any judgment on actions or what happened here, that is stone cold behavior. And you gotta throw some respect on that. Story 3. I was chilling at a friend's house as a kid. His dad was the chillest, nicest guy. That day, my friend's mom, also super nice, was across the street talking to the neighbor about something that I can no longer recall. Neighbor was one of those guys who never respected common etiquette. Music blaring, parking his crappy boat in front of other people's houses, cars parked on the lawn. The neighbor started screaming at the mom, and we all went out on the stoop to see what was happening. As soon as we got outside, the guy called my friend's mom a not-so-nice name. Well, my friend's dad heard that and went full Hulk mode. He ran screaming across the street and just frickin' decked the guy, crouching over him shouting warnings and threats. Took a while for his wife to calm him down. I don't think any of them had ever seen him react to anything in that way. Maybe even the dad himself. Find yourself someone who'll do this for you. I don't know. Am I crazy for thinking this is really cute and sweet? Maybe. It's kind of weird, I guess. But it just feels so, I don't know. Something about it feels so pure. It's the purest form of anger, being mad for someone else being disrespected who you really care about, I guess. Story 4. One of my teachers in high school was the calmest dude. Never yelled, never told kids off, would just laugh and smile and wait for us all to calm down and then continue on with his teaching. One day, we must have been particularly rowdy and we weren't calming down like we usually did. He couldn't get a word in edgewise. I could see him getting increasingly frustrated and eventually he just bellowed, "Shut up!" And the entire class was shocked into silence. He never had to do it again. Story 5. I worked as a line cook with a chef who I became really good friends with. Really chill dude, easygoing, and actually super fun to cook with. He taught me most of what I know about cooking, and I owe him a lot for my success. Never really saw him get mad until one day. We were getting slammed during a busy night, and one of the servers said something that really ticked him off. Not sure if I ever heard what it was, but the next thing I knew, he had sent the deep fryer basket flying at Mach 1 across the kitchen, nearly missing the dish kit and shattering a light bulb. He stormed off, and 5 minutes later, after a smoke break, came back, casually continued cooking as if nothing happened. He apologized about it the next day and we never talked about it again. The restaurant industry is a stressful place. Hey, takes a big man to apologize for it though. Got back to work, apologized when needed. I respect this guy. Story 6. This is not my story, but my dad's. Growing up, his best friend Leaf was a quiet, shy guy that was a bit socially awkward. In school, he wasn't physically bullied, but this one kid teased him constantly. This would have been late 50s, early 60s, so kids were expected to just tough it out. My dad would usually confront the kid, but one day a girl runs up to him and says that Leaf and the kid are fighting. My dad runs over to save Leaf, but when he breaks through the circle, he finds the bully flat on his back, Leaf sitting on his chest, holding him by the ears and smashing his head into the pavement over and over. My dad tackles him, wrestles him to the ground, and screams at him, asking what he's doing. The thing that stayed with me from that story was how he described it. It was like there was nothing in there. I felt like I could see the back of his skull through his eyes. Luckily, they were kids, so the damage was serious but limited. The bully escaped with stitches and a concussion, and Leaf had to talk to the school psychologist. My dad and Leaf stayed best friends, and when I met him as an adult, he was still quiet but less shy and awkward. Story 7. I used to see this woman in my building every day, very friendly. We always checked in each other's lives. We had lunch a few times over the years. It was friendly to a certain degree. A couple years passed. She was much older than me. One day, riding the elevator, she told me that she was saying goodbye. I said I was sorry to see her go and asked why. She said she was retiring that day. I asked her if her office was throwing a party or if she celebrated. She turned to me and her face contorted into an image of rage. She clenched her teeth and said she didn't tell anyone in her office, including her bosses. She only told the HR person last week. This was her last day and she was never returning to see or talk to anyone in her office again. Oh, this person had bottled up rage. They were ready to blow at anything. Must have been a stressful job. Story 8. When I was in my late teens, I was financially irresponsible and borrowed money from my grandparents to move out of my mom's house. We made a plan on how I would pay it back in installments, and I only missed 2 payments. With each one, I called my granddad and asked if it was okay, and he was cool about it. One day, I get a call from him, and he was livid. He was screaming at me on the phone, and I could hear my grandmother crying in the background. He was the angriest I've ever heard anyone in my life, and I was terrified. He wanted to know why I hadn't made the payment that month, but I was sure I had. It turns out I had accidentally set the automated payment to be drawn from the wrong account, and it hadn't done it. It was an honest mistake on my part, and I explained that to him. I transferred him the money immediately, and he instantly calmed down. I later found out that he'd become an alcoholic after he quit smoking, and he would talk to my grandmother like that regularly when no one was around. I didn't like this one. That one made me sad. Just people losing it on their partners, consistently. Sure, you lose it every now and then, you fight, whatever. But consistently, that just, I don't know. Especially a long-term partner, feels bad, man. Story 9. I've been in the USCG for a few years now, and along the way I met a really calm guy. We'll call him Joe. Joe had a wife and 2 daughters. He's soft-spoken, yet still authoritative when he needs to be. Always is nice to others and works very hard. Then there's another worker. We'll call her Jill. Jill is a power-tripping, annoying, loud, disrespectful person to anyone lower ranking than her. She's always talking about her definitely fake sea stories and what we call a blue falcon. I could go on for days about her. Anyway, one day on duty, Joe and his crew were out at a rescue case for over 6 hours throughout the whole night. Him and the crew got back to the station at around 2 or 3 a.m. They were so tired they collapsed on the couches in the lounge, which is connected to the conference/training room, which is divided by a folding partition that you can pull out of the wall. Well, morning came and there was a note on the door to the big room. Crew is sleeping from late night case, do not disturb. Of course, Jill completely ignored the note, bursted into the room, turned on all the lights, talking and laughing way too damn loud for 7:30 in the morning. She started to tell a ridiculous sea story, which always starts with, "So when I was stationed," and immediately Joe shoots up like a rocket from the couch and walks towards the partition in the wall, mumbling stuff under his breath like, "God damn, friggin' note on the door." He was vigorously fighting the partition, yanking it from the wall and pulling it across the 20-foot-long rail. Jill is watching him, and as he's almost done, she goes, "I can leave if you want." Completely unwarranted, Joe says, "That's what the frickin' door is for!" He closes the partition and lays back down. No one said a word, but I think everyone gained a little more respect for Joe that day. Story 10. My mom. We had what we now refer to as the Jerry Springer Christmas when I was 7 or so. One aunt hated her sister-in-law and started screaming at her. Then shoving started. Husbands got involved, and then it just continued to devolve from there. My mom went straight into mediator mode and tried to calm everyone down, but it wasn't working. She decided to come check on us kids and found my cousin and me holding each other and sobbing because we were scared. The next thing I hear is her scary mom voice screaming over everyone. "Listen here, you mother frickers. My kid is in there crying on Christmas because her family can't keep their crap together for 1 day a year. You're going to march your butts into that room, single file, and apologize to each kid individually. Then you're going to shut the hell up until I get them out of here. We're going to go look at the lights, and this family better be the picture of goddamn Christmas joy by the time we get back. My mom never really cussed in front of me and only ever used goddamn when things were really bad. That side of the family didn't celebrate Christmas for a few years after that. I am always down for a good mama bear story. Hell yeah. Story 11. So during my previous pre-pandemic job, I worked with a really talented, super nice manager named James, who was a total professional and very good with customers. He's one of those guys you look at and from sheer physical size, you would think that he could easily be a bouncer. But he's just an absolute teddy bear of a human being. Didn't matter what changes came down from the top of the company or how the business was going, dude just soldiered on as a beacon of positivity. Never got visibly mad or upset. He was pure Teflon to bad news. But one day, I got a call from a janitorial service we contracted with to do a lot of the deeper cleaning at our facility. During this call, they asked me to confirm that we have 2 day shifts and 1 overnight shift cleaning our building. I don't know why this came up exactly, but it was puzzling, since we only ever had 1 day cleaning shift and 1 overnight cleaning shift. And this had been the case ever since I began working at that particular location, probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years by this point. They kept insisting I must be mistaken and that surely there was a second shift during the day that I was just missing. However, I was the guy who had to regularly review their work and submit this feedback to the contracted company, so I was 100% certain that we'd only ever had the 1 day shift. Eventually, I put them on hold and informed James of this, and like a switch, the dude completely changed his attitude. Gone was the James who always had a smile on his face and never let anything get to him. In his place arrived a stone-faced mountain of a man who asked me to let him talk to these people. I give him the phone, he goes into his office, and I watch through the window as he becomes increasingly agitated, maybe even to the point of outright yelling, as the truth comes out that we'd been charged for the second daytime janitorial shift that we had never actually had. It was like watching a teddy bear turn into a grizzly in the span of 3 minutes. Dude was able to move past it and return to his normal self after the call, but while he was on it, I could tell he was just incensed by the fact that we were being billed for services we weren't actually receiving. Story 12. My dad is the most mild-mannered person I've ever met. He is the most composed, level-headed man I know. I once saw him trip in our garage and land in a bucket of nails and screws to realize he had one lodged into his kneecap. He looked over at me and said, "Don't tell your mom, she'll overreact," while he grabbed a pair of pliers and yanked out the screw. But when something happened to my special needs brother, he would get this sparkle in his eye that he could scare a Navy SEAL with. When I was 8 years old, my parents took my brother and I to eat at a restaurant, which was kind of a big deal, because my brother was recently diagnosed with a degenerative physical health issue, which was racking up huge medical debts, all while my dad lost his job after getting the bends on a work dive. We went to our favorite Mexican restaurant in town and parked in the handicapped spot nearest to the front door. I remember having an unusually light-hearted time in which I could see my parents' stress levels subside and listen to funny stories about the past. We simply enjoyed a memorable dinner with lots of laughter. Looking back, I realized this was a big expense that my parents probably couldn't afford, and sacrificed so we could have a normal night as a family. When we left the restaurant, we found a car parked next to us, not in a parking spot, but in the yellow stripes immediately next to our van. Normally, this might not be an issue, but my brother is in a wheelchair and we had a folding ramp. Not the hydraulic lifts that you see today, but a heavy metal powder-coated ramp. This was a Friday night, so traffic was crazy busy, and my parents didn't feel comfortable just backing up into the street to load my brother. So my dad went into the restaurant to see if the manager could find the owner of the car and ask him to move. When my dad emerged from the restaurant, I saw a look I have never seen before. It was one of focus, determination, and rage. He looked at my mom and told her to get in the car. She hopped in and just said, okay, in a way that indicated she knew something might go down. He turned to me and said, "Watch this." He unfolded the ramp and slammed it on the roof of the car next to us. Then turned to explain that the manager told him, "I'm not responsible for what happens in the parking lot. Why don't you just figure something out?" So he did. To be clear, there were maybe 4 to 5 groups eating in the restaurant. He could have easily asked someone to move. We waited for a minute and the manager came out yelling, "What are you doing? You can't do that." This was when my dad lost it. At this point, he picked up my brother's wheelchair with him in it, which weighed about 150 to 200 pounds, and sat him on the hood of the car while yelling at the manager. He then jumped on the hood of the car and then picked my brother up to put him on the roof of the car, still giving the manager the business. He jumped to the roof and calmly rolled my brother across the ramp and into our van. told me to get in and calmly told the manager, I figured something out. Since that day, I have never seen anything remotely close to the same level of anger from him. We laugh about the story from time to time, and my dad is always quick to say that he overreacted. But hey, I think he reacted just fine. This, beautiful. Come on, manager, just ask if the car is someone's in the restaurants and be like, can you move it? You're parked where you super shouldn't be. That's, I think, illegal. Or at least violating some bylaws or stuff. I don't know. I'm not a legal buff. Story 13. My aunt. For years, she was always super calm, always joking, and in a good mood. In my 15 years, I had never seen her angry at anything, and I had definitely never heard her cuss. Until Christmas, 1999. Some backstory. My mom had 2 younger brothers. One, jerk uncle, was/is a complete dong, and the younger one, good uncle, my aunt in the story's husband, is a pretty average guy and gets along with everyone. For years, my grandma enabled my jerk uncle, and despite my grandpa's best efforts, he just became more of a dong. Summer of 99, jerk uncle and my now ex-aunt are separated with a divorce pending. Her, still being nice to her nieces and nephews, called my grandma and asked if she could drop off our Christmas gifts, and my grandma said that was fine. She shows up, and my uncle is pissed. My grandma told all of us kids, including jerk uncle's daughter, to stay in the family room. My mom comes in and said that jerk uncle tried to punch his wife in the face, and my good uncle pulled him back and they fell through the neighbor's split rail fence. My always super calm aunt stands up and says, I frickin' had it with his wife beating BS. I'm calling the frickin' cops. I frickin' had it with this psycho jerk. I'm stunned. Can't believe it. My grandma is in a panic because, again, she enabled it, and him going to jail for DV would likely cost him his job, fire chief. Jerk uncle takes off, and shortly after, we all leave. Christmas ended a bit early that year. To this day, I've yet to hear my aunt cuss again and only ever seen her get upset about something, and it was again about my jerk uncle. I really wish YouTube didn't demonetize cussing. I feel like you're missing out on these stories. I wish I could give it to you, but also we do kind of like the money, I'm not gonna lie. Gotta keep it 100 with you guys. Story 14. It takes a lot to make my mom yell. On the rare occasion she did yell, it felt like she had real self-control, like she yelled on purpose because there was a reason to yell. Like she needed to be that loud for us to hear her, or one of the kids needed to learn to never run into traffic again, that kind of stuff. But one morning, when we were teenagers, my brother was being really, really difficult. My very sweet, soft-spoken mother yelled, God damn it, Sean! And threw a butter knife down so hard it stuck 1/4 inch deep in oak hardwood floor against the grain. I can still hear the noise it made. We were all very, very well behaved for the rest of the day. I did eventually ask my mom why she did that. Her explanation was that she felt too angry to hold a knife, even a butter knife, and was trying to get it out of her hand before she did something stupid. I had no idea how to sound like a woman yelling, or specifically a mother yelling, so I just moved away from the mic and just gave it my all. Hope it was acceptable. Anyway, this is super fair. I feel that. I've never had a moment like that before in my life, but I could see if I got really, really upset and I was holding a knife, I would try to remove the knife from my grasp. Because when you're really mad, you're not thinking straight, but you're thinking enough to be able to disarm yourself, you know? Anyway, that's all the time we have for stories today. This thread was a wild ride. I kind of liked it. What do you guys think? I hope you liked it too. I also hope you have a wonderful day or night, wherever you are. I'll see you in the next one.